I thought she was my miracle. She made me believe I wasn't too old, too broken, too late. We got married in Davao, surrounded by her smiling family. For once I felt chosen. Then I found a photo on her phone, a man, 2 kids, and her. My wife had a second family, and I was the one paying for them. Do you, Calvin Rhodes, take Clarisse to be your lawfully wedded wife? The pastor's English was broken, but his smile was genuine. I looked at her hands in mine, soft, warm, steady. She wore a simple white dress her mother had sewn. No veil, no fancy flowers. Just her dark eyes looking up at me like I was everything she'd ever wanted. I do, I said, my voice cracking. At 62, I thought I'd never hear those words again. Not after Sarah died. Not after 6 years of eating dinner alone, watching TV alone, sleeping alone in that empty house in San Diego. And do you, Clarisse Navarro, take Calvin to be your lawfully wedded husband? She squeezed my hands tighter. Her cousins, 2 teenagers she'd been raising like her own kids, were crying in the front row. Her mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue. I do, my love, Clarisse whispered. Forever and always. The way she said it, so soft and certain, made my chest tighten. I'd waited my whole life to hear someone say those words to me like they meant it. Like they chose me. The pastor switched to Tagalog, but I didn't care. I watched her face. The way she smiled when he blessed our union. The way she looked at me when he said we could kiss. When our lips touched, I felt something I'd forgotten existed: hope. Real, solid hope that my life wasn't over. That maybe, just maybe, I deserved to be loved again. I love you, I whispered against her ear as the small congregation clapped. Thank you for choosing me. She pulled back, her eyes glistening, and touched my cheek. You saved me, Calvin. You gave me everything. The church was tiny, tucked away in a neighborhood I couldn't pronounce, but it felt like the most important place on earth. Her family hugged me, called me Kuya, treated me like I belonged. For the first time in years, I wasn't the widow. I wasn't the old guy. I was the groom. I was her husband. At the reception, just rice, lechon, and San Miguel beer in her mother's backyard, I watched Clarisse laugh with her cousins. She looked so young, so alive. I thought about Sarah, how she'd want me to be happy, how she'd probably like Clarisse, how she'd tell me to stop overthinking and just enjoy this second chance I never thought I'd get. You look happy, Kuya, one of her cousins said, offering me another beer. Clarisse makes you smile. I nodded, unable to speak. I was happy. For the first time in 6 years, I was genuinely, completely happy. When we danced to a slow song on the concrete patio, her head on my shoulder, I whispered, "This is the best day of my life." She looked up at me, her eyes soft and sincere. Mine too, my lion. Mine too. Tell me about yourself, Calvin. That was the first message Clarisse sent me on Filipina Cupid. No games, no emojis, just direct and honest. I'd been on that site for 3 months, talking to women who wanted gift cards or phone loads before they'd even video call. Clarisse was different. She asked about my life, my work, what I wanted in a partner. I'm 62, I typed back. Retired truck driver. Widowed. I know that sounds old to you, but I still have a lot to give. I hit send and waited for the polite rejection. Instead, she replied within an hour. Age doesn't scare me, Calvin. Boys my age only want to party and waste money. I want stability. I want a man who knows how to love. That night, we video called for 3 hours. She sat in what looked like a small bedroom, the sound of traffic and karaoke drifting in from outside. She wore a simple t-shirt, no makeup, hair in a ponytail. Beautiful, but not trying to be. She worked at a call center in Davao, she said. Night shifts, dealing with American customers. She was tired of taking care of everyone else and getting nothing back. My cousins live with me and my mother, she explained. Their parents died in a motorcycle accident when they were small. I've been like a mother to them since I was 19. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever have my own life. The way she said it, so tired and honest, made my chest ache. I knew that feeling, being responsible for everyone but yourself. What do you want, Clarisse? For yourself, I mean. She was quiet for a moment, looking past the camera. I want someone who chooses me. Not because I'm convenient or young or pretty, but because he genuinely wants to build something with me. I want to feel safe. Safe. That word hit me like a truck. How long had it been since someone wanted to feel safe with me? Over the next 6 months, we talked every day. She called me her lion, said my age made her feel protected instead of anxious. Young guys here, they're all talk, she'd say. You show me respect. You ask about my day. You care if I'm tired. I started sending money for small things, her cousin's school supplies, medicine for her mother, groceries when times were tight. Nothing crazy, just helping. It felt good to be needed again. When I finally flew to Davao to meet her, I was terrified. What if I was too old in person? What if she was just being polite online? But when I walked out of that airport and saw her waiting with a sign that said, "My Calvin," I knew I was home. She hugged me like she'd been waiting her whole life, not just 8 hours for my delayed flight. "You're really here," she whispered, her face pressed against my chest. "I can't believe you're really here." Neither could I. For the first time since Sarah died, I felt like I had a purpose. Someone needed me. Someone chose me. Someone loved me exactly as I was, gray hair, wrinkles, and all. "This will be perfect for us," Clarisse said, walking through the small townhouse in a quiet barangay outside Davao City. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen with a view of the neighbors' chickens. The landlord wanted 6 months up front, about $800. I handed over the cash without hesitation. "Are you sure, Calvin? It's a lot of money." She looked worried, like she was asking for too much. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "Honey, this is our home. Nothing's too much for our future." The relief in her eyes was worth every peso. We were building something together. Something real. The next week, I bought her a Honda scooter for work. Bright red, brand new from the dealership. She cried when she saw it. "Calvin, you don't have to do this. I can take the jeepney." But I wanted to. I wanted to take care of her the way she took care of everyone else. The way Sarah would have wanted me to take care of someone. "You work night shifts at that call center. You shouldn't be waiting for public transport at 2 in the morning. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you, my love. You think of everything." That's what marriage was supposed to be, right? Thinking of each other, making life easier, safer, better. I furnished our little kitchen with a new refrigerator, rice cooker, and gas stove. Clarisse cooked adobo and sinigang like my mother used to make pot roast with love and patience. Her cousins, Jenny and Mark, would come over after school. 15 and 17, good kids working hard in their studies. "Kuya Calvin," Jenny said one afternoon, showing me her report card. "I got highest honors again." She was smart, wanted to study nursing. Mark was quieter, but he helped me fix things around the house. Taught me Tagalog words while I taught him basic car maintenance. "They're like my own children," Clarisse explained one night as we lay in bed. "When their parents died, I promised I'd take care of them, make sure they get good educations, good futures." I understood. Family was family, blood or not. When Jenny needed glasses, I bought them. When Mark's school required new uniforms, I covered it. When her mother's roof started leaking during rainy season, I wired money for repairs. "Calvin," Clarisse said one evening, counting bills at our kitchen table, "you've spent so much on us. Are you okay? I don't want you to struggle because of me." I sat across from her, took her hands. "Honey, I have enough saved for both of us to live comfortably. This is what I want to spend it on. Our family. Our family." That's what it felt like. Coming home to the smell of dinner cooking, hearing her laugh with her cousins. Watching Filipino variety shows I didn't understand but enjoyed anyway because she'd translate the funny parts. I felt useful again. Needed. Like my life had meaning beyond just surviving until tomorrow. "I love you, Calvin," she'd whisper as we fell asleep. "You gave me everything I dreamed of." I'd hold her close, breathing in her shampoo, listening to the sounds of our neighborhood settling down for the night. This was it. This was the life I thought I'd never have again. This was home. "I have to work tonight, love," Clarisse said, pulling on her call center uniform. "Double shift. American customers are crazy on Fridays." I watched her check her hair in our bedroom mirror, grab her purse and helmet. The Honda started on the first kick, still new enough to be reliable. "What time will you be home?" She paused at the door, already looking distracted. "Late. Maybe 4 or 5 in the morning. Don't wait up, okay?" The door closed before I could answer. I sat in our living room, listening to the scooter fade into traffic. Our neighbors were watching TV, voices carrying through thin walls. I was alone again. This was happening more often. 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Always last minute. Always urgent. Management needs me to stay. She'd text around midnight. Big project deadline. I understood. Work was work. Bills didn't pay themselves. But something felt different. The way she'd grab her phone when it buzzed. The way she'd take calls in the bathroom with the water running. One Thursday evening, she came home at sunrise with a story about helping a coworker whose mother was in the hospital. Poor girl was crying all night. I couldn't just leave her. Her uniform was wrinkled, her hair messy. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than work stress. Maybe you should ask for day shifts, I suggested. This schedule is wearing you down. She shook her head, already heading for the shower. Night shift pays better, Calvin. We need the money for the kids' school. The bathroom door locked behind her. I heard the water start, then the sound of her phone ringing. She answered it in the shower. The next week, I decided to surprise her. I drove to her office building at midnight with takeout from her favorite restaurant. The security guard looked confused when I asked for Clarisse Navarro. Sir, she's not on the schedule tonight. She called in sick yesterday. My stomach dropped. Are you sure? Clarisse Navarro, night shift, customer service? Yes, sir. I know her. She's been out 3 days now. I drove home in silence, the food getting cold on the passenger seat. When I walked in, Clarisse was watching TV in her pajamas, eating instant noodles. She looked surprised to see me. Calvin, I thought you were sleeping. I set the takeout on the coffee table. I went to your office. They said you called in sick. For just a moment, her face went blank. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Oh, that. Yes, I felt terrible this morning. Stomach bug. But I'm feeling better now, thank you for the food, love. She kissed my cheek and disappeared into the bedroom. I sat alone with our dinner, trying to push down the questions forming in my mind. Maybe the guard was confused. Maybe she worked for a different department. Maybe I misunderstood. But that night, while she slept, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen. See you tomorrow, babe. Kids can't wait. When I looked up, her eyes were open. She grabbed the phone quickly. That's just a joke from my coworker. She calls everyone babe. And she's talking about her neighbor's kids we sometimes babysit. Her explanation came out too fast, too practiced. You know how Filipinos are with nicknames, love. Don't read into it. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Because the alternative that my wife was lying to me every night, that our marriage was built on deception, was too painful to consider. So I nodded and pulled her close. Sorry for being paranoid. I just miss you when you're gone. But lying there in the dark, holding her while she pretended to sleep, I knew something was wrong. I just wasn't ready to find out what. The shower was running. Clarisse's phone sat on our bed, screen up, charging cable snaking across the mattress. She'd been in there 20 minutes, door locked, humming some Filipino love song. I could hear the water, smell her coconut shampoo. In 6 months of marriage, I'd never looked at her phone. Trust was everything, right? But that text from 3 nights ago kept playing in my head. See you tomorrow, babe. Kids can't wait. I picked up the phone. No passcode. Just swipe up and everything was there, messages, photos, everything. My heart was pounding like I was about to commit a crime. Maybe I was, but I had to know. I had to stop this feeling that was eating me alive from the inside. Her gallery opened. Recent photos showed our life together, us at dinner, her cousins at their graduation, her mother's birthday party. Normal stuff, happy stuff. But something made me scroll deeper. Past our wedding photos, past our first dates, into a folder labeled private. The first photo made my blood freeze. Clarisse in a hospital bed, holding a newborn baby. She looked younger, maybe 22 or 23, exhausted but smiling. A man stood beside the bed, Filipino, about 30, his hand on her shoulder. The timestamp said 3 years ago. I scrolled to the next photo. The same man holding the baby. The baby had Clarisse's eyes. My hand started shaking. More photos. A toddler taking his first steps. Clarisse clapping, crying with joy. The man picking up the child, spinning him around. A birthday party. The boy, maybe 2 now, blowing out candles while Clarisse and the man sang. They looked like a family. They were a family. Another folder. My angels. 2 children now. The boy, older, maybe 4. A girl, about 2. Both calling her mama, in video clips. The man was in every photo, every video. Playing with the kids, kissing Clarisse's cheek at Christmas. All of them at the beach, building sandcastles. The girl calling him Papa. The shower stopped. I heard Clarisse moving around, probably drying off. I kept scrolling, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might stop. More recent photos. The man helping the boy with homework. Clarisse braiding the girl's hair. A family dinner just last month while she was supposedly working late. All of them together, happy, complete. The bathroom door opened. Calvin? Did you say something? I looked up, phone still in my hands. She stood there, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, and saw me looking at her screen. Her face went completely blank. Not surprised, not angry, just empty. Who are they? My voice came out like a whisper. She walked to the dresser, started pulling out clothes. Calm, too calm. Who are who, Calvin? I held up the phone, showing her a photo of her kissing the man's cheek while their children played in the background. These people, this family, your family. She pulled on a t-shirt, still not looking at me. I never said I didn't have a past, Calvin. You're the one who asked me to marry you. Her voice was steady, cold, like she was discussing the weather. You're the one who said age didn't matter. You're the one who wanted to take care of everyone. Those are your children. It wasn't a question. She finally met my eyes in the mirror. Yes. One word. No shame. No explanation. No apology. And him? The man in all these photos? She sat on the bed beside me, started braiding her wet hair. Jerome, their father. The room felt like it was spinning. Are you still with him? She finished her braid, stood up, grabbed her purse. I'm going to stay with my mother for a few days. You need space to think. She headed for the door like this was a normal conversation. Like she hadn't just destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. Clarisse, wait. We need to talk about this. She stopped at the doorway but didn't turn around. What's to talk about, Calvin? You know the truth now. Decide what you want to do with it. The door closed. I heard the Honda start up, listened to her drive away. I sat alone in our bedroom, holding her phone, looking at photos of the life she'd been living while building another one with me. My wife had 2 children and a partner I'd never known existed, and I'd been paying for all of them. 3 days passed. No calls. No texts. No Clarisse coming home at dawn with stories about work. I sat at our kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of receipts, adding up everything I'd spent since arriving in the Philippines. The numbers made me sick. Rent deposit and 6 months advance, $800. Wedding expenses, $600. Her Honda scooter, $1,200. Furniture and appliances, $1,500. Jenny's school supplies and uniforms, $300. Mark's books and fees, $400. Clarisse's mother's roof repair, $800. Medical bills when her cousin had appendicitis, $700. Groceries, gas, utilities, and daily expenses, $400 a month for 10 months, $37,000. In less than a year. Money I'd saved from 20 years of driving delivery trucks, living cheap after Sarah died, planning for retirement. Money I thought I was investing in our future, our family, our life together. But whose life was I really paying for? I thought about Jerome and those children, the boy who called her mama, the girl who looked exactly like her. Where did they think the money was coming from? New toys, better clothes, school fees, medical care. Did Jerome think he was providing all of that? Or did he know about me, the American husband, funding their comfortable life? I drove to Jenny and Mark's school. They weren't Clarisse's cousins. They were probably Jerome's nephews or neighbors or friends. Kids she'd used to make her story more believable. Make me feel like I was part of a family instead of bankrolling someone else's. The principal confirmed what I already knew. Their fees had been paid in cash all year. Always by Clarisse. Always with American dollars, she said came from her husband who works overseas. That night, I called her mother's house. A woman answered in Tagalog, then broken English. Clarisse not here, sir. She go to Manila. Family emergency. Family emergency. Right. Jerome and the kids probably needed something. Maybe the boy was sick. Maybe they were moving to a bigger house. My house. My money. Their comfort. I thought about calling the police. But what would I report? My wife married me legally. She never promised to cut ties with her past. She never said she'd give up her children. I was the fool who assumed "I love you" meant only you. I was the idiot who thought forever meant we'd build something new, instead of funding something that already existed. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the realization that I'd never been her husband. Not really. I'd been her sponsor, her safety net, her way of giving Jerome and their children a better life without Jerome having to work harder or sacrifice anything. I'd been played so perfectly, so completely, that I'd thanked her for the privilege. I poured a glass of rum, the expensive stuff we'd bought to celebrate our first month of marriage, and sat in our empty living room. The furniture I'd bought, the TV I'd installed, the home I'd created for a woman who already had one. Everything looked different now. Not like a beginning, but like a very expensive mistake. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Sir Calvin, this is Jenny. 8 Clarisse told us to tell you she's sorry. She said, you're a good man, and she hopes you find happiness." I stared at the message until the words blurred. Even her goodbye was delivered by someone else. Even the end of our marriage was outsourced. I finished the rum and went to bed, alone in sheets that smelled like her shampoo. Tomorrow I'd start figuring out how to untangle this mess, how to get my money back, my dignity back, my life back. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the ruins of what I'd thought was love and let myself feel how completely, utterly stupid I'd been. 1 week. 7 days of waiting for her to come home, to explain, to fight for us, to say something, anything, that would make this make sense. The Honda never came back. Her side of the bed stayed empty. Her toothbrush gathered dust in the bathroom. On day 8, I drove to her mother's house. The address I had written down from our wedding invitations. A small concrete house with a tin roof I'd helped repair 6 months ago. I knocked. A teenage girl answered, looked confused when she saw me. 8 Clarisse? She doesn't live here, Kuya. This is my Tita's house. But her mother. The girl shook her head. Tita Elena moved to Cagayan last month, new job. She said her daughter got married and didn't need help anymore. The door closed, politely but firmly. I stood there staring at fresh paint on a porch I'd never seen before. Even her mother's house had been a lie. I drove to the barangay captain's office, filed a report. My wife disappeared. I need help finding her. The captain, a tired-looking man in his 50s, took down the details without much interest. Name, age, last known address, when I'd last seen her. When I mentioned the marriage certificate, he looked up. "Sir, if you're legally married, this isn't abandonment. Maybe she just went to see family. Filipino women. They're very close to their families." I pulled out my phone, showed him the photos I'd found. The captain studied them, handed back the phone. "This is a civil matter, sir. She has children, yes, but that doesn't make your marriage invalid. There's no crime here. But the money I gave her." He held up a hand. "Sir, gifts between spouses aren't theft. If you willingly supported her family, that's not illegal. I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do unless she committed fraud or stole from you directly." I left the office with a case number that meant nothing and advice to try to work things out. I stopped by her call center. Same security guard who'd told me she wasn't working the night I brought food. "Sir, Clarisse resigned 2 weeks ago, effective immediately. Said she was moving abroad with her husband." He smiled. "Lucky girl, right? American husband taking her to the States. Abroad. With her husband." I sat in my rented truck outside the building, watching night shift employees arrive for work. People Clarisse had supposedly worked with for years. None of them looked like they missed her. None of them asked about the American guy she'd married. She'd been planning her exit long before I found those photos. That evening, I walked through our townhouse one more time. 2 weeks of dishes in the sink, laundry piling up, bills unopened on the counter. Everything I'd thought was ours suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. Her closet was empty except for old t-shirts she didn't want. Her jewelry box sat open, nothing inside. I found one thing. A note tucked under her jewelry box, written in her careful handwriting. "Calvin, you gave me everything I needed to take care of my family. I hope someday you understand that's love too. I'm sorry it has to end this way. Clarisse. No forwarding address, no phone number, no promise to explain, just an apology that felt more like a business transaction closing. I crumpled the note, then smoothed it out again. Read it 3 more times looking for something that sounded like the woman I'd married, the woman who'd called me her lion, who'd said I saved her, who'd cried when I bought her that scooter. But this note could have been written by a stranger. Cold, practical, final. She was gone, not just away, gone. And I was sitting in a house full of furniture I'd bought for a life that had never been real, surrounded by evidence of the most expensive mistake I'd ever made, holding a goodbye note from a woman who'd never been my wife. Not really. I'd been her solution. And now that her problems were solved, she didn't need me anymore. The envelope came on a Tuesday. Official letterhead. Bureau of Immigration. Inside, a form requesting updated documentation for my spousal visa. Clarisse's signature required. Marriage certificate needed. Proof of continuing relationship. I had 30 days to comply or face overstay penalties. I called the number at the bottom of the letter. Waited 20 minutes on hold listening to instrumental versions of Filipino love songs. Finally, a woman answered. Immigration Services. How can I help you? I explained the situation as simply as I could. My wife disappeared. I don't know where she is. I can't get her signature. Long pause. Sir, are you saying you want to report a missing person? No. I'm saying I need to renew my spousal visa, but my spouse is gone. What do I do? Another pause. Computer keys clicking. Sir, you need to come to our office. Bring all your documentation. We'll need to interview you. The office was in downtown Davao, a concrete building with long lines of people holding folders full of paperwork. I took a number and waited 3 hours. When they finally called me, a middle-aged woman in a government uniform looked over my file. Mr. Rhodes, you were married to Clarisse Navarro on March 15th last year. Spousal visa issued April 20. Due for renewal next month. Yes, ma'am. But she's gone. Left 2 weeks ago. No contact information. No forwarding address. The officer studied my marriage certificate, then my passport. Sir, what's the reason for the separation? Domestic violence, irreconcilable differences? I didn't know how to explain it. She had another family, children I didn't know about. She was living a double life. The officer's expression didn't change. That's not grounds for abandonment under immigration law. Many Filipino women have children from previous relationships. Did she commit fraud during the marriage application process? I thought about it. She'd never lied on the marriage certificate. She'd never claimed to be single. She just let me assume things that weren't true. No fraud, ma'am, just, she wasn't who I thought she was. The officer closed my file. Mr. Rhodes, without your wife's cooperation, we cannot renew your spousal visa. You have 2 options. Apply for a tourist visa and leave the country every 60 days, or depart permanently. Which would you prefer? I stared at the form she slid across the desk. Departure card. Date of exit required within 30 days. What if I find her? What if she comes back? The officer looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. Sir, she resigned her job, vacated her residence, and terminated her lease. Her mother moved to another province. This appears to be a permanent departure. So I have to leave. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, but your legal status here depends on your marriage. Without your wife's presence and cooperation, you cannot remain in the country. She stamped the departure card and handed it to me. You have 28 days remaining. I walked out of that building holding a piece of paper that officially ended my life in the Philippines. No appeals process, no second chances, no legal way to stay in the country where I'd thought I'd found love. The woman I'd married had the power to keep me here, and she'd chosen to take that power with her when she disappeared. That night, I started packing. Not because I wanted to leave, but because I had no choice. My wife had made that decision for both of us when she walked out the door. Just like she'd made every other decision in our relationship. I'd thought I was building a new life. Turns out I was just visiting someone else's. The flight back to San Diego was the longest 14 hours of my life. I sat in the middle seat between a businessman who never stopped typing and a college kid watching movies on his phone. Everything I owned fit in 2 suitcases and a carry-on bag. 11 months in the Philippines, and this was what I had to show for it. Some clothes, a few souvenirs, and $37,000 worth of expensive lessons. LAX looked exactly the same. Gray carpet, fluorescent lights, people rushing to catch connections to somewhere else. I took the shuttle to long-term parking, started up my old truck, and drove home to the house I'd been renting out while I was married. The tenant had moved out the month before. Perfect timing, I guess. Even my luck was bitter now. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Emptier. Sarah's pictures were still on the mantel where I'd left them. Our wedding photo from 32 years ago. Her smile at the beach in Coronado. The Christmas morning before she got sick. She looked young and happy and completely in love with me. Real love. The kind that lasts until death, not until someone finds a better option. I found work at a storage facility near the airport. $10 an hour, helping people move their stuff in and out of climate-controlled boxes. It wasn't much, but it kept me busy. Kept me from thinking too hard about how completely I'd screwed up my life. The manager, a guy named Rick who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, didn't ask why a 63-year-old retiree needed a minimum wage job. He just handed me a uniform and showed me how to work the hydraulic lift. "You seem like you're running from something," Rick said one day as we helped a family load furniture into a 10 by 10 unit. "None of my business. But this job's usually for guys half your age." I thought about it. Was I running? Or was I just trying to figure out how to live with myself after being so blind, so stupid, so completely taken in by someone I'd thought loved me? "I made some bad decisions," I told him. "Lost a lot of money. Lost a lot more than money." Rick nodded like he understood. "Been there. Different war. Same casualties. You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But talking to people helped. Telling my story helped. Not for sympathy or advice, but just to get it out of my head and into the world where it couldn't torture me quite as much." I started going to a coffee shop near the storage facility. Same booth every morning before work. Black coffee, wheat toast, newspaper I barely read. The waitress, Maria, was maybe 50, had been working there 20 years. She had kind eyes and didn't push conversation, just kept my coffee cup full and asked how I was doing without really expecting an answer. One morning, she sat down across from me during a slow period. "You look like someone who's got a story," she said. "I've been serving coffee to broken hearts for 2 decades. You've got that look." So I told her, not everything, not the humiliating details, but the basics. Married a woman in the Philippines, found out she had another family, lost my money and my dignity in the process. Maria listened without judgment. When I finished, she refilled my cup and patted my hand. "Honey, you're not the first man to fall for the wrong woman. You won't be the last. But you're here, you're working, you're putting one foot in front of the other. That's what matters now." She was right. I was still here, still breathing, still capable of getting up every morning and functioning like a human being. I don't date now. Don't trust my judgment. Don't believe I'm capable of seeing people clearly anymore. If I could be so wrong about Clarisse, about everything we supposedly had together, how could I ever trust my instincts again? Better to stay alone than to risk destroying someone else's life with my bad decisions. But I talk. I tell my story to anyone who'll listen, not for pity but as a warning, because I know there are other guys like me out there, lonely widowers looking for a second chance at love. Men who think age and money can buy genuine affection, guys who confuse being needed with being loved. I tell them what I learned too late. Not all second chances are real. Some people don't marry for love. They marry for solutions. I thought I married for love. Turns out I paid for someone else's peace. And in the end, that's a kind of love too. Just not the kind I thought I was buying. Just not the kind that includes me in the happily ever after.